we got to thinking on Friday after Nick Roush told us about Mark Stoops' situation at Kentucky. We're like, okay, we are going to rescind the best job in America title from Kentucky. And obviously we say that tongue in cheek because it's basically you get paid a ton of money and you're not expected to win the SEC. We want to do the best jobs in America, period. The ones that, you have a chance to win the national title. You have a chance to win multiple national titles. You have the best chance for long-term success. And Ari, I'll be honest, I didn't start thinking about this until 2015. And I went on Feinbaum one day in 2015 when I was working at Sports Illustrated. And this was going into Mark Richt's final season at Georgia. And I said, Georgia's the best job in the country. They should be winning national titles regularly. That they're not is a problem. And if Mark Richt doesn't get it turned around, they're going to have to make some hard choices. And people went nuts, not at the insinuation that Mark Richt needed to turn things around, but at the insinuation that Georgia was the best job in the country. Because they're like, how can you say that? Alabama is clearly the best job in the country. And I'm like, no, Nick Saban is clearly the best coach in the country. But if you ask Nick Saban, he'll tell you that Georgia's the best job in the country. Like, that's who I got the idea from.
Yes, the Alabama aspect of this is the trickiest part, Andy, because they have been so good for so long, and historically speaking, they are one of the most decorated programs in the entire country. But is Alabama the job the thing, or has it been a product of amazing coaches like that? And
it's a little bit of both, because obviously Bear Bryant, Nick Saban,
and that builds on it. Like that
build it into a
So
but it's a legitimate question, and it's also why Nick Saban in his post-retirement has been adamant about trying to make rules in college football that will bring it back to closer to what it used to be, because that helps Alabama. Like, the new system does not help Alabama.
Okay, so I mean, I'm gonna. How do you want to do this? I've got my list here. So, do you want me to? Just
I've got mine, and I will say something that happened yesterday helped crystallize how I did 1 and 2. I knew which programs were going to be 1 and 2. I wasn't sure what order I was going to put them in.
Interesting. Okay. Why don't you go ahead? Because you're freaking me out a little bit.
Okay. I'm keeping Georgia at number 1. I was not sure if I was going to do that, but I go back to what Steve Wiltfong told us a few weeks ago, that they're taking the NIL piece more seriously, that they're making competitive offers in the NIL space, because I still think Kirby Smart's staff gets guys ready for the NFL as well or better than anybody, that the way they practice, the way they prepare allows them to be better than most teams. They're still in the best geographic area to get recruits, and I don't care what you say or how much money you have. Like, being able to drive home still matters to some people. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna leave Georgia at number 1. I was tempted to knock them down 1 because of the NIL piece of it, but if they're going to be as competitive in the NIL space as everyone else, I'm gonna leave them at number 1.
Okay, so I'm gonna tell you my number 1, which is probably your number 2. My number 1's Texas. They are no. What?
Well, we'll get to it. Keep going.
You're not doing that, are you? You're going to do that?
Do what?
Your number 1 team is going to be that team? Okay.
My number 1 team is Georgia.
Oh, sorry. Your number 2 team is going to be that team?
The team you covered for 10 years? That just won a national championship? That isn't afraid to spend an NIL?
I thought you were going to... Okay. All right. Okay, number 1's Texas to me.
Okay.
And I think that Texas is a place that has been a bully a little bit in NIL. They have a lot of talent to go around. They're all pulling in the same direction. Like you said earlier on the show, it's a historical program. They're knocking on the door. And part of this too, Andy, is that when you talk about Georgia and Ohio State, like, I don't know how you rank this from a person who's I rank this as like if I'm applying to a job, not like which teams have been most like this.
You just want to live in Austin. I see how it is.
Austin's a great city, but also too, Texas is a storied program that's still dying to get over the top. Like, Ohio State and Georgia expect championships because they've tasted it recently. Like, Texas has the entire.
Yeah, but I think that's part of it. I think knowing what it takes to win is a big thing. Like,
yeah, but I think that like if I were applying for a job, like these are all vacant jobs for me. This is how I did it, and maybe
it's a great way to look at it. Yeah,
they're all vacant jobs. I would die to go to Texas because the chance to be the person who wins a modern day championship for the first time since Vince Young at a place that gives you all the tools to do it, a very storied place, a very easy place to recruit, and a place that's got a Brinks truck to back up on a front lawn. Texas to me was number one, and Texas had been number one in the past, like even like in the early 2000s, and I think that in the recent history it has ascended back up. And I think you can
see,
make
I had Texas way down late teens and into the into the 20s.
Dysfunctional then, right?
Very dysfunctional administration, but since Chris Delconte got there as the AD, he's gotten everybody on board, everybody pulling the same direction. So I don't have a problem. Like, I'm not even going to argue with you about this because I can accept Texas as number one if you're making good arguments here.
Yeah,
and I also don't think.
And also, too, don't you think who do you think has a better? And this is tough. And I'm not.
I don't think the top three are that different, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, we all have the same top three, but different orders. The thing I want to know from you, and I'm not going to argue, I just want to know your opinion because I feel. Who do you think's got a more advantageous geographical footprint, Georgia or Texas?
Georgia.
You still think that?
Oh, Georgia players are better than Texas players, and Georgia's closer to Florida, and Florida players are better than everybody.
Yeah, Texas is close to Louisiana. That's got a lot of players, and like
there's this thing called LSU that gets most of those. So.
No, I know, but if you want to play that game, you can go back and look at Georgia and how they've done in their own in-state recruiting the last 4 years, and it hasn't been tremendous.
Okay.
I'll
take Georgia's recruiting.
What?
I'll take. I wasn't
going to argue, but like that's
the depth of Georgia's recruiting. No, I know this is I'm going to make the whole state of Texas mad, but like I'm telling you right now, if you have a choice between Georgia and Florida players or Texas players, you're taking the Georgia and Florida players.
Clip it, River. Yeah, but also like Texas is a place that can go into California, but so is Georgia. Like I don't know. Like I feel
Brock Bowers from Napa, baby.
And
but
like,
no,
what is the
we're splitting hairs here, and I'm glad you said this. I'm glad you have Texas number one because, like, you're right, and I think there's a chance that 3 years from now we could be saying, yeah, Ari was looking more to the future, Andy was looking more to the past.
Yeah, mine is all future predicated. I mean, I'm using the recent past to kind of guide me because NIL was a factor here. And the one thing we know about Texas is that they're ahead of the game and ahead of the curve from Georgia. Georgia's catching up, but Texas is one of the leaders of it. You know, Texas's like recruiting has gone through the roof because they have been wheeling and dealing behind the scenes.
But Georgia has won national titles more recently. Georgia played Texas twice last year and beat them both times. Like, I think Georgia's doing just fine. The thing is, Georgia didn't have to make much of an adjustment. They did need to. But the fact that they have now, and if they're going to be playing the same game as Texas.
If it makes you feel better, Andy, Georgia's my number two. So, like, I mean, like, it's not like we're 12 spots apart here. But
and I have Ohio State number two, and you have them number three. And I have Texas number three, and you have Texas number one. I don't think there's that big of a difference between these three jobs. I think if you get one of these three jobs, they should expect you to win a national championship, and they're going to give you the resources you need to win it. Ohio State.
Do you want to unpack Ohio State a little bit? Because Ohio State, to me, was a team that, like Georgia, had to catch up in NIL. Like, if you remember how they were for the first few years, they lost players out of high school, and they had two different collectives. It was kind of all over the place. They seem to streamline their approach, and like last year's roster, I mean, people view as the poster child of NIL, and I think that it is, but for very different reasons. People thought that Ohio State bought their team last year. They did. They certainly did, but they bought the players they already had. If you go back and look at the way that they did it, I think that's the most functional way to do it. Recruit really good players out of high school, develop the hell out of them, and then retain them is such an important piece to this whole thing. And if you go look at some of the players that made the biggest plays on the biggest stage towards the end of the year, like Jack Sawyer and the strip sack that he took back to win the Texas game. That's a guy who could have gone to the NFL, been a 5th round pick. We've been through this, but Ohio State's NIL was so good, and they spent all that money on their roster, but they did so by allocating the majority of their funds to players they recruited out of high school, which I think is the most functional way to do it. And
that's what Georgia's been doing. That's what Alabama's doing right now. Like that.
And Ohio State's recession proof. I feel like they've proven that they are one of the only.
They've never had a down period in their entire history,
like a 7-year down period of being bad. Just has never happened. But at the same time, too, I don't think that Ohio State's geographical footprint, although this isn't necessarily as important as it's been in the past, is as deep as Texas and Georgia.
No, it's not. But it is good at the top. Like, and that's the thing with Ohio, with West, because you can go into Pennsylvania still. Like, it's good enough at the top that you're going to get some top end players, and you're going to be able to get what you want out of there, and then you can go into other places and get what you need.
And here's the thing that we have to acknowledge, Andy. If you're not beating Michigan, your life is terrible. Like, there is a major risk. And like, listen, as we go down our list, like, this is a much different proposition than it was 7 years ago. Ohio State beating Michigan used to be taken for granted. They did it every year for 20 years. And then that you wouldn't really think about that. But now that Michigan is a top 10 job in America, and they have obviously opened themselves up to NIL and gotten Bryce Underwood, and like, Michigan is becoming a bigger problem for Ohio State, for not just because they've won, what is it, the last 4, but because they're committing to football in a way that they weren't committed to it while Ohio State was dominating them.
Well, and that we're going to get to that discussion too about where Michigan falls on this list, because it would have been much further down before.
Okay,
but not now.
So let's keep going. All right, I love this. This is like this.
What's your number 4?
What's your number 4? Oregon.
Me too.
Okay, Oregon.
And this would not have been a top 5 on either of our lists 5 years ago.
Oregon, to me, used to be a top 10 job, like in the 9 to 12 range. But because they have there's no players in Oregon, period. But Oregon has made California its own state. Like, and I don't know if USC's, they're doing really well in recruiting in 2016.
USC's recent changes may change that. Yeah.
They might change that. But for the time being, Oregon gets what they want for the most part in California, and goes out and flips SEC commitments at the last minute and is in like head-to-head, down to the wire recruitments with 5-star quarterbacks from Nashville. Like, Oregon's NIL is probably the leader in the entire country in terms of functionality. They also can mirror it with one of the largest corporations and the coolest corporations any kid or teenager would want to be a part of. Their uniforms are sick. They play in a conference now that is going to be in the mix every single year. They're going to be amongst one of the richest, if they weren't already, programs in America. Their facilities are amazing. And I just think that if you take away the geographic footprint piece of it and make it less emphasized in your final ranking, you have to have them in the top 5.
I also think, and Texas is probably, you can make this argument for them too. Oregon and Texas have shown that good evaluation plus a willingness to spend on players can change your fortunes very quickly. Very, very quickly. Because Oregon now has one of the best rosters in college football, as does Texas. And they're producing NFL players at a very good clip. And they're in on guys that basically everybody who's a big-time recruit, Oregon is in on now. Like, they don't always stay in on them, but their evaluations of them are pretty good too. Like, the ones that come down to Oregon and somebody else, whether they go to Oregon or not, usually end up being pretty good. So
yeah,
Lanning and his staff have done a good job evaluating. I would argue the same thing about Sark's staff at Texas.
They're going to win a national title in the next 10 years. It's going to happen. Like, they're going to keep knocking at the door, and eventually they're going to break through. And
it's what we saw. What we said with George and Kirby Smart early on in his tenure there. Like, if they keep doing this, they're going to win one, and they won 2.
The thing that I like about Oregon too, Andy, that nobody will say, but I'm going to say it. They played in the national title game during the era in which local talent was king. Like, right. They already transcended it at a time in which it was really hard to transcend. There weren't a lot of teams in that position that were competing at that level. So the fact that they were able to do it in another era shows you exactly what they are capable of. And now
what the potential is. Yeah.
Yeah. So I like them. Okay. So let's go 5. This is where I think we're going to split.
Okay.
I went a little buku on this one. So forgive me.
Will you go first then?
A&M.
Okay.
A&M.
Explain.
A&M is a loaded team that plays in the SEC. Has
loaded with money, not necessarily loaded with the best players.
Right. This is an open job, Andy. When Jimbo Fisher got fired last year, or whenever that happened, was it been 2 years now? God, we're getting old. I wrote a column for The Athletic that went viral. People went absolutely insane. And I said, you can make a case that one of the best jobs in college football is open. And people are like, A&M sucks. A&M, and it's the same thing.
Does being cursed matter? Like, apparently it doesn't matter to you. You're the guy who'd buy the old creepy mansion and then get chased out the first night.
I don't believe in ghosts.
You're cursed.
I don't believe in ghosts.
They're cursed. Until I see them win something, they're cursed.
No, see, that's the deal. Like, I actually think the right coach there, and also too, Andy, this is the richest program that can get the best players that has the lowest expectations. Which, as a person taking a job,
they have low expectations for 5 minutes. The second they win something, the expectations are national championship.
Well, their expectation or their hope is to win a national championship, and they're one of the 10, 15 programs in college football that actually has that as a ceiling. And like, I think like it's crazy because there's another team in the SEC that certainly needs to be higher on this list, and I'm assuming might be in your top 5. That might not be in mine, and they might be in a town in Louisiana that people are going crazy on.
You mean one that actually has won 3 national titles this century with 3 different coaches?
Yeah,
that one. Okay.
I love the A&M job. Like I don't know if this is just me, but like I feel like, you know how I have like kind of an ego, like, and people hate it. Like I'm an arrogant asshole sometimes. Like the most romantic thing to me and attractive thing about being a coach in college football is legacy and building something that you can.
Oh, you want the statue. You want the statue. You don't want to be one of 6 statues. You want to be the statue.
I feel like I want to be the statue. Like, and I think that you have a place that has money, will compensate the hell out of you, has the resources in NIL to get good players, has a unique and tradition-rich place, has a national championship ceiling, and doesn't have a person to make a statue of. Like, it's attractive as hell to me. And like, I know like the curse or whatever bullshit I don't know. I think that the right coach has a chance and does have a national championship ceiling there. You have a chance to make a lot of money and to be beloved in a way that you will not be, battling in the record books with. Like, you go to Alabama, you go to, Georgia or LSU, like all these places where like their last 4 coaches have won it. Like, you're just the next cog in a machine. Like, I would want to build it with my hands. I want to be malleable. And like, that's my thought process. You don't have to agree with it, but I think it's a rational.
No, yeah. And look, it makes perfect sense. Everything about A&M makes perfect sense. Tons of money, giant stadium, great location.
I always have to have
a problem is they're cursed.
How I am. I always have to have a weird one in there. Like
cursed.
And people will call them clickbait. That's how I feel. That's how I feel.
I know it's how you feel.
And like,
I am taking my number the curse into account. Yeah, I'm taking the curse into account. My number 5 is LSU because you could win a national championship there.
That's
previous 3 coaches did.
Because my number 6 is LSU, but I wanted to go first because I knew you were going to be LSU, and I wanted to like make it interesting.
Oh yeah, no, LSU is an interesting job, and I'm not sure this time last year I would have had LSU this high if we were doing these with the in the NIL era, because I wasn't sure where LSU was on that. But if you look at what they did in the transfer portal this year, you look at the way they've recruited in the 25 cycle and the way they're recruiting in the 26 cycle. I think LSU has figured out the formula here. So you add a play like LSU is one of the rare places. Ohio State's the other one where the kids who grow up in that state really, really want to play there. And even in the NIL area, I think that matters a lot. And so when you have some good recruiting years in Louisiana, and it does ebb and flow a little bit, but when you have deep years in Louisiana and you get most of those players, you're going to be really good. And
LSU I look at tradition, money, stadium, fan buy-in, geography, and history of winning. Like you could make the case that LSU could be one.
It is not as wealthy of a state, and if you're going to have to still get people to donate to your player payment system, which I think you're going to have to, or you're going to have to make whatever happens when the House settlement gets approved, you're still going to need rich people to help you out. They don't have as many as Texas, as Ohio State, as Georgia, but they have enough. They care deeply, and they're going to have enough money to make this work. So I do think there are going to be cases where those other programs are going to be able to money whip them a little bit, but LSU has something that most of those don't. Ohio State has it too, where potentially a really good core of good players in your state that want to come play for you as long as you are competitive.
Yeah, and it's got the unique advantage of being the only big-time football program in a talent-rich state, which Ohio State also possesses, although Cincinnati's in the Big 12 now, if you want to count that. They weren't for many years in a power conference. But, and
they're not looked at. It's like Georgia and Georgia Tech. They don't really compete against one another for recruits, even though they're both in power conferences.
Yes. So then you have to go Alabama at 7 because, what are you going to do?
Do you?
Top 10? I don't know. I have Alabama 7 because I think that a lot of it has been propped up by the greatest coach of all time, but a lot of it, the history, the uniform, the stadium, I don't know.
They care so deeply. Like the fact that people care so much about University of Alabama football, and the school's always going to pull in the same direction, and they're always going to do, try to have the best program possible. I agree with you. Now, I don't have them 7 though, because we haven't done my number 6.
Oh, I blew it. Okay, go. You do 6.
You
and
ready?
7. Yep.
Notre Dame.
Interesting.
And I would not have put them here 5 years ago. I don't even know if they'd be in the top 15, because what was the biggest gripe about Notre Dame? And a lot of it was Brian Kelly indirectly saying it.
Not being able to get kids into school.
Correct. They seem to be able to now recruit a talented enough roster, because you saw that they got to the national championship game in spite of lots of injuries last year, and so they were deep, and they also didn't get an easy path into the they played a slog to get to the national title game. So I think now that and a lot of it may be because the NIL era has flattened the sport slightly, that Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, Texas, it's harder for them to just build the super teams. That's where Notre Dame benefits, because a roster that would not have been able to compete with those types of rosters before now can, because they're very similar at the top of the roster, and there's a little bit of depth there. I think Marcus Freeman's done a really good job recruiting, just proving that you can make a deeper team than maybe you could in the Brian Kelly era.
I think more than anything, I think Notre Dame is the beneficiary of the fact that super teams are becoming rarer. Because I still doubt that.
But they're also very willing to spend on players. Very willing.
I doubt still, and I don't know if this is wrong or right. I'm the big Notre Dame guy now, but Notre Dame's, with push come to shove, with the recruiting region, which has meant the least amount of them historically, and the standard and culture of the place. Because the thing that you have to understand too about Notre Dame is it's not for everyone. I feel like if you want to go to LSU or Alabama or Georgia or Ohio State, you could find fun and your type of vibe there, no matter what you are.
You have to be a specific kind of person to thrive at Notre Dame.
Thrive at Notre Dame. And then academically speaking, I think that those two things make it more difficult to build a super roster. But they might not ever have to now, which is the reason why I moved them up, but I didn't move them up quite that high.
So I also had Alabama at number 7.
Okay.
For the reasons that and this is, again, we talk about, Nick Saban has made this abundantly clear. And I think Nick Saban probably was hinting at it before he retired. The NIL era makes it tougher on Alabama to do what Nick Saban did. Nick Saban looked at the NIL era and said, I probably can't dominate the way I did, because I can't build as deep of a roster as I did, because they can't create more millionaires in Alabama. They will never have more millionaires in the state of Alabama than they have in the state of Texas.
Nick Saban has made headlines this week. We haven't talked about it. but he has been talking to President Donald Trump about trying to reform and potentially sign an executive order. I don't know. We could have a segment about this tomorrow because I don't know what that would look like or how it would be applied. But I think that what you said about the NIL space, and if you are an Alabama fan who is upset to see them so low on our lists, your former legendary head coach is telling you why they're number 7 on our lists.
Yeah. Basically, I formulate all these lists based on what Nick Saban thinks. Like the first time I moved Georgia to number 1 is because that's what Nick Saban thought. This is a reflection of what Nick Saban thinks. And what he wants Donald Trump to do is basically hand down an executive order that turns back the clock, that makes it where there is a hard cap on what players can make, which I don't think can happen without repealing the Sherman Act, which has a lot more functions way beyond college sports. So I don't think that's going to happen, or if it did, it would be very temporary because you just can't arbitrarily cap an entire workforce's earning power. It's not going to happen in this era. So I think that's not great for Alabama for the reasons that we've listed. Now, does that mean Alabama can't produce great rosters and win national championships? Absolutely not. Because just like we were talking about Notre Dame, the flattening of the sport, like as long as you evaluate well and you have a deeply caring fan base that's gonna fund you, which Alabama does, you're in the mix.
And like this history still matters to a certain extent, right? Like being Alabama still matters to every like that's the thing. What's the life cycle of? I think if you are 5 years removed from a title, that's the life cycle of what you look like in a fan's head, or I mean a recruit's head. Sorry, like I think people like will remember Alabama's dynasty and Nick Saban run, who are listening to the show for the rest of their lives. But when Nick Saban won his last national championship, the 5-star quarterbacks 5 years removed from a title will have been 11 when that was happening. So you have to like frame yourself in the mind of like, what do recruits remember? And I think that the 5-year cycle is a very interesting dynamic as it pertains to how you're viewed in recruits' minds. And they still have it, but like their history should speak for themselves. But like continuing to win is always important in that regard, which is why Kalen DeBoer's on the pressure cooker right now.
So who do you have at number 8?
Okay. 8, Michigan.
All right. That's who I got at number 8 as well.
This sucks.
I'm sorry. I know you wanted to argue more.
Michigan I have at number 8 because it's a team that broke through and won a national title. It is a wonderful academic institution, although not the type of place that will restrict the type of person who will want to go there. It's got some of the most beautiful uniforms in college football. It's got an iconic stadium. And now
get to the point. They're willing to spend now. That's why they're here.
They're willing to spend. Well, I'm just saying all the things. Historically speaking, it's a blue blood program that's willing to spend now.
We had this discussion. Remember sitting? Were we at Michigan or Ohio State? I can't remember which year it was. It was after the game. I was yelling at you about putting chicken fingers in ketchup, and
they would have been like 20 on the list back then.
Right. We were having this argument about why, and I wrote a column for The Athletic that year. It must have been 2019. It was. That was the year. Was 2019 the year that Michigan was favored? No. 2018 was the year Michigan was favored, and Ohio State blew them out. And then 2019, Ohio State just blew them out again. This was the year that Jim Harbaugh got the question of why is there a gap? Yeah, he got really mad when the guy said, "Is it coaching?" It wasn't coaching. It was a willingness to do what you got to do to win national championships. Which, if you look at the chat right now, it's all about Michigan's willingness to do what it has to do. It's basically Ohio State fans calling Michigan cheaters and Michigan fans saying no. So
it was late November 2019 was when you yelled at me about the chicken fingers, right?
That's okay. This was the same argument, and you and I were in agreement about Michigan at that point. Like, they need to treat football the same way Ohio State treats football, or they will never. And as a university,
do you remember that night or the night before we went out drinking with Nick Baumgartner, who was the Michigan beat writer at the time, now was like a NFL draft guru in Detroit. And I drank like 12 Bud Lights, and I was like screaming.
I was not there. I was at another game the night before. So,
I was screaming at him in the bar of like why Michigan standards weren't higher, why they were okay with losing to Ohio State. And if you like look at the headline from the game, I sent it to River. I'm going to give him a minute to put it up. but it bothered me. And I used to like get called a Michigan hater all the time because like I would be like, why are you guys okay with this? Like I thought that Jim Harbaugh should have been fired after year 5.
Yeah. This was not an uncommon opinion. This was we've lost Ari, by the way. He's frozen on the screen. It's amazing. Like, I love this look on his face. But this was how we felt and how everybody felt. And it felt like Michigan didn't care as much about winning at football as Ohio State did. I don't think that was really in dispute. And what you saw after that is, if you're asking an Ohio State fan, oh, Michigan started cheating. Well, nah, that probably isn't what really did it. Michigan started taking it very seriously. Jim Harbaugh revamped his staff, got rid of a lot of older people on the staff that were kind of from a different era, brought in a bunch of new people. They recruited much more aggressively than they did before. You can argue whatever you want about the Connor Stallion stuff. That's fine. I don't really care at this point. We've talked that to death. But now you get into the Sharon Moore era at Michigan, and look at what they did last offseason. Look at the Bryce Underwood situation. They could not complete a forward pass. They had one of the worst passing offenses in college football. There was a kid in Belleville, Michigan, who was the number 1 quarterback recruit in the country, who was going to go to LSU, and they put together a Godfather offer to get him. So that should tell you what you need to know, that Michigan is willing to spend the money. The willingness to spend the money on players, it's the same reason I have Texas moved up. It's the same reason Ari has Texas at number 1. It's the same reason I kept Georgia at number 1. It's the same reason I have Notre Dame in the top 10 when I wouldn't have pre-NIL era. It's the same reason Oregon's in the top 5. Being willing to spend the money on players at this point in this era is all that really matters. You have to have that willingness. You can't say we're going to do this on a discount or we're going to out-evaluate everyone. You have to evaluate well too still, but you got to be willing to spend, so when the special player comes along, you can get him. And I hope Ari's okay. We've lost communication with Ari, so hope he's all right. Hopefully he's just power went out at the house or something. But power did go out at the house. So we will move on. I'm going to go to my next one on the list. I'm going to go to number 9 on my list. It is Clemson. And this is the first time conference affiliation comes into it, especially in the era of maybe multiple automatic bids per conference. Clemson in an ACC, and I realize that this may not last for very long. This system may not last that long. It may only be a 3 or 4 year period. But Clemson in an ACC that gets 2 automatic bids, which is what we think is going to happen in 2026, feels like a program that can pretty much pencil in a CFP appearance in a lot of years, where all you've got to do is be one of the 2 best programs in the ACC, and you're in the playoff. Clemson has, a more exaggerated version of what we were talking about with Alabama, where you're not creating more millionaires. It's not a huge fan base. It's actually a relatively small fan base, but they're incredibly passionate. They are willing to devote resources to their program. You've seen Clemson; they're working on trying to close that gap, money-wise, between what they get from the ACC and what the SEC schools they have to compete against recruiting get. But also, that series they just made with Notre Dame is for getting more money. Like, because the bigger the brands you play, the more money you're going to get from the ACC in the new system. So they're doing all that. So I do think Clemson can just stay where it is in the top of the sport, where the access to the playoff for Clemson is going to be, I would say, easier than a lot of these teams that we've mentioned. We'll see. I mean, if the Big Ten and the SEC are getting 4 spots, then maybe I'm wrong. Would Ari, I had Clemson at number 9. Would you agree or disagree there?
I don't have them at number 9. Sorry, Notre Dame's
Okay.
my number 9 team.
Okay.
By the way, not only did my power go out, there was like a loud noise. So it's my did my generator or something just bust? I don't know what happened.
Well, somebody, we've had that happen at our house before, where basically like somebody crashed into a transformer quarter mile away, and the whole block went out.
Something popped in the house, and I'm a little bit nervous about it. I think it's a good news that the power came back on 4 seconds later. But
yeah, I don't know that that's necessarily something in your house. That may be something down the line. So
okay, I hope so, because I don't have the stamina or the ability to do any of this stuff. Okay, yeah, so anyway, to put a bow on the Michigan stuff, did he put the graphic up of the story I wrote that day?
He did. We were talking about how Michigan at that point didn't feel like you said that how Urban Meyer killed the game. My story the same day was about how Michigan doesn't care as much as Ohio State about football. And I would say that it's abundantly clear now that they do, but they weren't acting like it back then.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, we are on the same. So we put a bow on that. Notre Dame's my 9 for all of the same reasons that you had. Clemson at 9, I think makes sense. I am still kind of on guard for what they I don't know. I'm still skeptical for Dabo's plan. I think it might work, but we'll see. Yes.
Yeah, we'll find out. So who do you have at number 10?
Willie T asked, does Ari always say stamina? Yes, I do. It's a flaw of mine. Andy makes fun of me for all the time. Stamina.
Do you also say supposedly?
No.
That's the one that drives me insane.
This is the word I can't say for whatever reason, and I cannot spell restaurant, which is hilarious because it's my favorite thing to do in the entire world.
My daughter, when she was learning to speak, pronounced it restaurant. And we still say, are we going to go to a restaurant or eat at home?
That honestly sounds a lot like the way the word is spelled. So I don't blame her for that. It's a very dysfunctionally spelled word. Yeah, so my number 9 is Notre Dame. Do you want to go to your 10 now? Or have you you go to your 10.
I'm gonna go with my 10, and this is one that I also probably would not have put here, but I think they are now there. And it was a case of administrative not caring as much about football as they probably should, and now they do, and that's Penn State.
Yeah, interesting. I struggle with Penn State because Penn State is in this general area. My number 10 was Oklahoma, though.
Also a good one.
The reason why is Oklahoma is a storied program, a place that has had very few downturns the way that Ohio State did. I feel like they're even Ohio State light in the sense that they haven't had 5-year periods of being bad. I know we're kind of in the midst of one right now where it feels like things aren't going to be better. But if I know one thing about Oklahoma, it's that it will always be good. So but Penn State also too at this point is kind of breaking through at a time in which Oklahoma is declining. And I think you have to take what's happened in the recent past with a little bit more measured, meaning.
Yeah, look, you could put Penn State in the SEC right now and they'd be fine. Penn State's roster is loaded. So,
but I feel like with the sport changing, both in NIL and in the playoff and in the conference alignment piece of it, I wonder if Oklahoma is going to have a harder time avoiding downturn seasons now that they play in a conference where the 7th best team can beat anybody that's the thing that kind of blows my mind.
This is where I wonder where we're going to test history here, because historically Oklahoma has always been good. They have had a couple, they had the late 90s downturn, but really have not had many downturns. Ohio State's never had a downturn. Oklahoma's really only had the one. So,
but I wonder if Oklahoma hasn't had a downturn because they've had advantageous schedules for a long time.
That's where we test history here. Exactly.
Blows my mind because Texas had downturns in the same conference, and they were and they're my number 1 team on this list. So maybe that's wrong. In the Big 12 could have been downturn city because we've seen other historic teams and programs have those in that conference. But Penn State I think is a good choice there. Penn State would probably. I just did 10.
I did 10 too, but. We've got a comment in the chat from USC Priority, and I'm glad they brought it up because I think this is an interesting discussion to have. USC is a top 5 college football job. You guys amaze me for all the wrong reasons. Okay, USC Priority. So here's the thing. This is one of those if this is true, then this also has to be true. If you think that USC is a top 5 job, what do you think of the job Lincoln Riley has done? Because if it's a top 5 job, then he's doing a terrible job.
And you know how I feel about it.
I don't think USC is that easy of a job. I think it's hard. This is, and I had the same thing about Texas for a long time, and I had the same thing about Florida, where everybody thinks it's such an easy job because of where you are. But history says it's been a few good coaches that have really succeeded there. But not everybody can do it. Like,
yeah,
the reason LSU stays on these lists is because everybody can do it there.
The thing
everybody can be good there.
With USC, and I don't know if this is going to be offensive to some, but I don't think that USC has fan support that you find in the SEC. Like, I think that their fans are fickle for a lot of them. Like, I don't think that the base, like, I mean, I know like what the numbers for like their posts are and stuff, and like if they're not doing well, their fans are checked out. Like, I don't think that
and Oregon is a more similar fan base to what you see in the rest of the Big Ten and the SEC.
Except the Lakers aren't 10 minutes away, you know, and the Rams, I don't know. LA's got beaches. I don't know if I'm not saying they're bad people. And I know that there are diehard USC fans that are plugged in like USC priority year round, right? Like he's here talking about it on May 6th. But like, I feel like if USC drops 2 games out of their first 6, like their fan base is gone. Like, and I feel like that to me is maybe part of the reason. But if you want to like come up with like a hypothesis for why places that seem to be easy jobs on paper. I mean, like, listen, I have a team that's never won anything in my top 6.
USA priority. Are we going off best jobs or easiest jobs? The best jobs are easier to win in than the worst jobs. Like if it's hard to win, it's not one of the best jobs.
I think it's a USC priority. It's a combination of everything. It's how much money you make. It's the resources you get. It's fan buy-in. It's stadium you play in. It's NIL support. It's recent history. It's all these things. And if you want to put USC in the top 5, go ahead. But I just don't know that there's been a lot of top. I mean, I think Texas
Pete Carroll was a really good coach.
Texas A&M
That's what I think
is the exception. But I don't know that I like.
But see, I don't have Texas A&M in my top 10.
Texas
A&M,
reason. Andy, though, I think is interesting to open up another, thought process. Which team or teams that have had 15-year downturns since the year 2000 are also still equipped to win a national championship moving forward? Like, I think Texas A&M is the exception to that rule. Are there any other ones that would fall into that mix? I guess USC maybe, right? I mean, USC's in that conversation of like teams that haven't really been nationally relevant for a long time, who have a ceiling of national title. And I don't know if USC's ceiling is national title right now. I think Florida, I would put Florida ahead of USC. Florida's not on either of our lists.
No, and Bruce River points out we don't have a single school from the state of Florida in our top 10. And I'll tell you exactly why, as someone who lives in this state and has followed these programs very closely. Them competing against one another is part of the problem. Like, I have always pushed back on the argument of, Florida recruits itself. Florida State recruits. No, it does not. Miami doesn't recruit itself. Like, it is war down here. And everybody else is coming in to get players too. It's not like it's just those 3 competing.